Hey guys, Karen Run for Agent Carter, Season 2, Episode 8, Edge of Mystery, and Episode 9, A Little Song and Dance. Sorry I'm reviewing this later than usual, guys. It's been a very long week for me. I've had very long rehearsals for my school musical, and I've been very tired, so just try to be patient with my reviews this week, because especially the next 2 weeks, reviews will probably come out at a much more leisurely pace. Definitely, I'm going to say that right now. They're not going to be as rushed. I want to sleep. It's that simple. I get very tired. I'm sorry. But I was really looking forward to this episode. Obviously, I really love the pair of episodes last week. I thought they worked very well together. In fact, that's something I thought was really good last week. For 2 hours, they worked really well. Like, it really seemed like these two episodes that, like, okay, that was very satisfied, them being 2 hours. So I was looking forward to this as well. I'm like, okay, this is cool. We get 2 hours of Agent Carter for the next 2 weeks, and then next week we have the finale, which, holy shit, I can't believe we're already on the finale. But I will say, I think these episodes were a bit disappointing. There were just some things that I wasn't as big as a fan of. I found some things to be quite underwhelming, and the best scene in both of these episodes really had nothing to do with the episode, and we'll get into that. You guys know what I'm probably going to talk about, but let's get into this episode, starting off with episode 8, Edge of Mystery, which definitely, out of the two, is the better episode. Episode 8 was definitely better than episode 9, and it's not that episode 9 was bad, it was just, compared to episode 8, it was really underwhelming. But let's get to episode 8. Now, I really do like the way episode 8 starts, because this was something that was very interesting. We see a flashback to 1 year ago. Anna walks in, overhears Jarvis on the phone, helping helping Peggy with one of her missions from season 1. And we basically get to see how Anna found out about Peggy. Jarvis tells Anna about Peggy and how she seems to be one of the few women that Howard Stark respects. And Jarvis promises that Peggy won't interfere with their lives, but Anna tells him not to make promises he can't keep. And it's clear that she has. And it's not really her fault. It's not her fault that she's interfered. It's just the way that things turned out. She had to get involved, and there's not really a lot they could have done about that. So it's a sad scene, but I like that we kind of saw this. This was something that was interesting, and it makes sense why Anna wasn't upset with Peggy or anything like that. But it does also make sense why Anna was so prepared for Peggy. It totally does make sense, so I like seeing that. So in the present day, Jarvis sits next to Anna, and I have to say, something I really do love about this episode is that we really got to see a different side of Jarvis. Jarvis is usually the funny one, really had to channel some emotion, and I definitely really did like seeing that. I think the actor that played him, I can't think of his name right now. I believe his name is James. I want to say James Darcy. I want to say James Darcy is his name. I'm not sure. I want to say that's his name, but if it's not, then sorry. But he really did a great job in this episode, because again, we got to see a side we haven't seen before. We got to see him be the serious guy, and I like seeing that. He had some really genuine serious moments. You really see that he does care about Anna, and she lies unconscious in her bed. He fiddles with the radio. Peggy walks in. Jarvis becomes frustrated, smashes the radio. Peggy calms him down, says she's going to fetch another radio and some toiletries for Jarvis, assuring him that Anna will wake up. And I like that she's trying to give him this confidence. She's not 100% sure if Anna's going to wake up, but she wants him to stay confident, obviously, and stay strong. So she pretty much is saying that because of that. So Wilkes wakes up handcuffed to a chair, and Whitney is studying him, timing how long he takes to fade away, and asking him what happens when he disappears. And here's my biggest problem with this episode. Whitney in both of these episodes didn't feel compelling. She really didn't. I don't know what it was, but it didn't really seem like she was that motivated. Like, it just seemed like that she was acting like a villain. And I know that Whitney doesn't think she is a villain. Villains don't think they're villains. And this episode, she felt way more comic booky villainy, and I wasn't as big as a fan, but the way they've been handling Whitney's arc, it seems like everything's kind of been, two ways. Like, you could understand why Whitney was doing things. Here, I don't know what she was really doing. I don't really know what the good she was doing here was, because she tried to give us some good last week and the weeks before that, but this is probably the first week where I didn't really see a motivation for her. She says she'll let him go when they're done. He offers to write some notes, but Anna can tell that he's stalling. Whitney can tell he's stalling, and he says he's hoping he disappears and doesn't come back. And Whitney says that they should work together, but Wilkes doesn't want her near him. And if you remember, she offered him the partnership, and I was wondering if she was serious about it. And she has to be hears the voice, and he says he does. And at 10 seconds until he fades away, Whitney reaches out, and she needs him to stay alive, because basically she needs him. And Interesting stuff there. So Sousa finds blood on the roundabout outside the Stark estate. Peggy pulls up, tells him what happened last night. Sousa tells her about what happened with Masters and how he is now the chairman and is basically taken over. And obviously Sousa's upset with this, but he also knows there's really nothing he can do. So Peggy says that they should bring the uranium rods in a play to swap them for Wilkes. And Sousa tells Peggy about Whitney's relationship with Manfredi and how dangerous Manfredi really is. Peggy and Susan pay a visit to Manfredi's restaurant, and Manfredi cooks for his Nona while Peggy and Sousa take care of his men, and Thompson leaves a bar drunk, singing with a British friend. The friend hands over a redacted file. His friend goes inside another bar, and Thompson, fully sober, walks, which I was surprised that Thompson was sober, but he's just happy he's actually sober. He walks away to investigate the file. He used a device to read the redacted information on Peggy's brother Michael, and I'm like, oh shit, now he's gonna find out the real reason why Peggy entered this job in the first place, which I thought was very interesting. For me, though, where they're going with Thompson, I'm always like, this is very compelling, and then it seems like they're dropping things. However, Thompson, I thought, was very good in both these episodes. That's something I definitely really like, is that I think we really started to establish who Thompson is, what he's working for, and what's really going on there, and I like seeing that. So Peggy and Sousa discuss Whitney with Manfredi. Manfredi tries to send them away, but Sousa threatens to tell an ally of Manfredi's that he was the one who turned states of evidence, and Manfredi agrees to deliver a message because you can tell that last week that he wanted to neutralize Whitney. He thought that she was working, being way too hard, and he really wanted her to not be as tough, be as crazy. I mean, he really loves her. You see that he really loves her, and that love, I mean, I don't know if it's enough to take her down completely, but it's clear that he loves her, and just that is enough, I think, to try to take her down. At least just try. And you don't have to, but you can at least try to. So, when he continues to debate with Wilkes about the merits of controlling the zero matter over destroying it, they stop when they hear the voice in their head. Manfredi interrupts them to tell Whitney about Peggy, and he tells her that Peggy will trade the uranium for Wilkes. Whitney agrees, and basically that's what they're gonna do because we know that Whitney wants Wilkes, and Jarvis then begins making promises of Anna to all the things he'll do, begging her to wake up. She wakes, and this was the thing that was kind of like, really? She's already woken up in episode 1? Look, if she woke up in the second episode, I would have been fine with that, but this just kind of felt like this was only there so we can see Jarvis channel some emotion. This really didn't seem like it did much for me. It kind of just seemed like this was just Jarvis's reason for us to care, and I don't know, it just didn't really work, I have to say. I was like, really? She's already woken up? That's kind of a cop-out, I gotta say. So she tells him not to make any promises he can't keep. Jarvis kisses her and goes to find the doctor. He calls Peggy to fill her in. When he gets off the phone, the doctor tells Jarvis that we find out. Now, this I thought was very interesting, though. Apparently, the shot that Anna took was so lethal that she can't no longer, that she is now infertile. She can no longer have children. And he tells the doctor that he'll break the news to Anna himself. But once inside her room, Jarvis doesn't bring it up. It's just too much for him to do. And I can understand that. I mean, she just got out of a coma, and he's not going to tell her this news just, right away. He needs her to adjust. But this is something that she needs to know. I mean, this is very important. I mean, this is information that she probably really does care about. And especially if they do want to have children. My problem with this is that I don't really think these two have really discussed having children. I'm sure that they want to have children, but we haven't really heard Anna and Jarvis say, oh, we want to have children. And I'm sure they did, but it just didn't really seem like that as big as a deal as it was. So that's kind of my thing here. That's kind of why this was a bit underwhelming. But I will say I did like this twist. I thought it was pretty good. So Sam, because there was some, there were, some complications here. It wasn't just, oh, she was in a coma, she woke up. I thought that was good. There was something more to that because they took what could have been really just a random, person being attacked to something much more, and I like seeing that. So Sam really puts together some fake uranium rods for Sousa and Peggy. The three get ready to head to the meet with Whitney when Jarvis arrives. Peggy tells him to go back to his wife, but Jarvis seems determined to come on the mission. Jarvis and Peggy argue about it until they get a message from Howard, and they bring the message to Samberly, who says their design specifications for some kind of energy can that could eliminate zero matter, and Samberly feels a bit over his head, but says that he'll start working on it. And with Samberly timed up, tied up, Jarvis fills in as the driver on the mission because Sam Lee's badly tied up, and they're leaving when they find Thompson waiting for them. He shows the file, says he has something on her now, but Peggy says that it's a forgery from Masters, and that he's not going to get any access to this, and basically, Peggy says Thompson is better than cutting corners to get ahead and leaves, and she's very annoyed. She has so much to deal with. She even says, look, I don't want to deal with this right now, just leave me alone, and I like that she told him that. I like seeing that, because honestly, this was annoying what he was doing. So, Whitney and Manfredi wait on a loading dock. Manfredi flatters Whitney, but Whitney calls him a liar. Manfredi says that the mark on her face is power, and she shouldn't have to hide it. Pulling the scarf around her face as Peggy's team arrives. It's kind of a sweet scene, though, because, again, you see he really does care about her. Peggy's team backs up the truck, opens the door. They show each their goods. The rods register as well. They make the trade, but the rods falls out of their case, and Whitney realizes that she's been duped, and Peggy's team makes a getaway in the truck, but Manfredi's men follow. Peggy fills Wilkes, I don't know why I said Jason. Peggy fills Wilkes in on Howard's gamma cannon, and Sousa wonders why Manfredi's men are going so slow when Wilkes steps out of his containment chamber, pulls a gun on Peggy, literally just out of nowhere, pulls a gun on her. He demands they tell him where the real rods are. Peggy resists, but Sousa gives in. Wilkes makes a getaway with Manfredi's men. You know he has some sort of plan with Whitney. He's obviously not going to turn against them like this. You know there's definitely more that he's going to do. You just don't really know what it is right now. So Masters congratulates Thompson on a job well done, but Thompson says he's questioning the validity of these files because remember, his mission was to go after Peggy, and he's still trying to get the information, but I like that Thompson's saying, look, these documents aren't very valid, and they're interrupted by a call from Whitney. Thompson leaves Masters' office, but picks up another phone to listen in. Masters goes to open the SSR safe with the rods inside, but Thompson's waiting there to stop, and I understand why Masters is trusting Whitney. He doesn't trust Peggy. He doesn't think that Peggy is, someone that he should trust, and that's why he's trusting Whitney. I understand that. There just really weren't enough scenes with Whitney here, us seeing her by herself, seeing why she's doing this, seeing her motivation, getting us to care about her like we have in other episodes. I really didn't care about her in this episode. I just found her as a standard villain. I mean, I really did not think it worked as well, I gotta say. Something about it was just missing. It wasn't there. So Peggy and Zeus arrive to find Thompson confused about why he's there. They find Samberly's mind-wiping device on the ground and the uranium gone, and the last thing that Thompson remembers is being on the phone listening to Master's conversation, and then basically he was just kind of knocked out. So that's very strange, and I like seeing Thompson vulnerable here, like him not knowing what's going on. Thompson wrote a note with Whitney's coordinates, and Thompson plans to go with them to find Whitney, but Sousa and Peggy are hesitant to trust him. He convinces them to believe him, and Thompson heads out, and you know that he's just trying to get information, but I like that they weren't quick to, trust him. I thought that was good of them to do that. But Sousa and Peggy have a conversation about Wilkes, and Peggy believes that they're still trying to rescue him, but Sousa says that he's a hostile now, and Sousa tells her they need to be dispassionate, but Peggy calls him out on giving away the location of the uranium. Thompson tells them to move along, and basically, Samberly's filling Rose in on the gamma cannon. When Jarvis arrives to ask for a word with Rose, he asks her to look after Anna while he's gone, hands over a suitcase full of favorite items. It's a nice scene overall. Rose gets the impression that Jarvis thinks he may not be coming back, and hugs him just before Peggy tells him to move out, which, that scene was like, oh my god, Jarvis could die. I mean, I knew Jarvis obviously is not gonna die, but just the fact that he could, I mean, it's pretty crazy. So Peggy's team heads for Whitney's location. Whitney's preparing to replicate Isodine's original nuclear test to reopen the rift and absorb the zero matter that pours out, and Wilkes worries that the experiment won't work, but Whitney assures him that the voice in their hands promises it will. They set off the bomb, the rift opens, and Whitney stops hearing the voice as Wilkes is pulled into the rift. Peggy's team begins setting up the gamma can. They ask Samberly about the effectiveness of the device, but Samberly has no idea how the thing will perform. Samberly does say, though, that they have only enough energy for one shot, and hearing this, Jarvis decides to go after Whitney himself, takes off in the car. Peggy follows in the truck, and Thompson, Sousa, and Samberly aim the can and fire. It hits the rift and closes it, just depositing Wilkes' skin, literally crawling below, and basically, Anna then wakes to find Rose waiting in her room. She tells Anna that Jarvis asked her to take care of her until he comes back. Inside the box Jarvis gave Rose is his last will and a testament because, again, he doesn't know if he's going to survive here. But it's not, again, there's nothing about her not being able to have children. He's not going to tell her this. And you realize that if Jarvis dies, she's never going to know. So Jarvis gets out of the car, shoots Whitney twice, but the zero matter heals her. Peggy and Jarvis turn to find Manfredi and his men with his guns drawn. Whitney tells him to keep Peggy and Jarvis alive to control Wilkes, and that's how this first episode ends. So I really did enjoy the first episode. That was a good way to amp up some tension. Definitely got me interested in this episode. However, the best thing about both episodes came in the very beginning of the ninth episode, because I had heard about this. I had, and I'm like, is this really gonna work? But I thought this worked really well. We see the episode opens in black and white at the SSR office. Peggy's there, calls for anyone else before noticing the lack of color. Literally, it's black and white. It looks like an old movie, which I thought was really cool. I like the way that they did that. I thought that was really cool how that was done. And she finds her brother Michael in the chief's office. She blames Michael for getting himself killed so that she would take up his flag, and Michael points out that she's only doing what she always wanted to do, and I don't know, a lot of people said this scene lacks substance, but I really think it did. I think this was kind of showing the choices that Peggy's made and where her life has taken her and really what she needs to decide overall. So a green light from the neon L&O automat sign pours in. Suddenly Peggy's there and in color. Angie is then magically back, which it's great to see that character. I do hope that we see her again, because if they just reduce her to this scene, I'll be quite upset, because I really did like the character last year, and I hope they do more with her than this. Angie tries to take her order, but Peggy says she doesn't know what she wants, and Wilkes is sitting next to her, offers himself, then starts dancing, and Sousa shows up with a few extras, and then all of a sudden just starts singing. And I gotta say, the Sousa, he has a great voice. I was very surprised with his singing abilities. He really can sing very well. Everyone begins dancing, and Peggy obviously is very confused as to what's going on. The number finishes. Sousa leans in for a kiss, but Andy pulls Peggy away into another dance. Dottie's there as well. They all sing and dance over Peggy's indecision. This song called What You Gonna Do, It's Up to You. I believe that's an original song. And I really like this song because, yeah, it very much is up to Peggy. You know, she has to choose between Sousa and Wilkes. My only problem is that I don't really feel that this love triangle is as strong as it should be. Wilkes especially, we haven't had a lot of scenes with him and Peggy romantically. We had some scenes in the beginning, but since Wilkes has been, you know, under this zero matter and everything, and because of what's happened to him, we really haven't gotten a lot of scenes between these two. So this scene really wasn't as strong as it could have been, but this was an awesome scene nonetheless. Suddenly, Jarvis appears in a tuxedo with more dancers surrounded by Anna, Dottie, and Whitney. He's telling her to wake up. Rose finally punches Peggy awake, and I was like, oh, that really sucks. I was really getting into the first 6 minutes, I have to say. They were fun, they were a nice change of pace, and they were a good way of kind of getting into Peggy's head and seeing how she sees things, which I think is very interesting of how that was done. So I overall really did enjoy the musical number. I thought it was very well done, was very well choreographed, and really showed the cast's talents. I mean, I was very surprised, and I thought they did it very, very well. By far, though, the highlight of both these episodes. The problem is that the rest of this episode really wasn't not great. It was real. There were parts that were really good, especially towards the end. But a lot of this episode was very, very underwhelming, and I'll get into that. So back in her reality, Peggy wakes up bound by rope in the back of the truck with Jarvis next to her, and Thompson, Sousa, and Samberly are still in the desert waiting for Peggy and Jarvis. They've been there for an hour and realize something must be wrong, but Peggy took all the supplies and transportation. The next town is at least a day's walk away. They spot an SSR car in the distance, but Sousa recognizes Vega, one of the men who beat him up, and Peggy unties Jarvis. He tries to explain his actions, but Peggy won't hear any of it, and there was some good conflicts here between Peggy and Jarvis. I thought they did a good job with this, definitely. The SSR car pulls up to find Thompson being held at gunpoint by Sousa and Samberly. The men turn on Sousa, and Thompson tells them that to take the others in. Vega turns his gun on Thompson, but Thompson takes him down, and Sousa and Samberly are taking in. Peggy and Jarvis then find the door to the truck chain shut, and Peggy takes off her belt, pulls out the hot wire. She uses it to burn through the chains and swing the door open, which that was badass. That's totally something that Peggy would do. She tosses Jarvis out, follows herself. The vehicle drives away. Peggy and Jarvis then begin walking towards civilization. Wilkes wakes up in the back of Whitney's and Manfredi's car. His eyes are totally black, and he says that something's wrong. He says he's not well, and Manfredi pulls over. Wilkes says he saw nothing but blackness on the other side of the rift, but he doesn't know why he came back. You know, he wanted to go, and he feels pain, and then his eyes are turning normal. So Whitney plans to take him to the city to examine him, but Wilkes says that they can't take him to a populated area because he's dangerous. And again, my biggest thing thing here is that it really didn't seem like Whitney was very motivated. It just seemed like, oh, I want to test on you because I want to blow up things. Like, it didn't really seem like that whole thing with her saying how they are, humans too, and that they need to be treated differently, and need to be respected more. That was a very good way to set it up. And here it kind of just went away. It didn't really seem like she had that motivation. It was weird. So they all get out of the car so that Whitney can show Wilkes that they have Peggy captive, but they find the truck empty because they've gotten out. Manfredi then shoots the truck driver, then turns on Wilkes, oars him back in the car. Manfredi leaves behind some men to search for Peggy and Jarvis, and we get this really great bicker between Peggy and Jarvis, which I actually really like. They're continuing down the road. Jarvis blames Peggy for breaking Dottie out of prison, which led to Anna being shot, which, yeah, that is a big part of it. Jarvis points out that everyone around Peggy dies, and that's kind of true. I mean, everyone that really loved her and protects her, they end up dying, and Peggy takes the opportunity to point out how privileged and consequence-free that Jarvis' adventures have been so far, but she hasn't had that privilege. Everything she does has some sort of consequence, but his really don't, and Jarvis tells Peggy that Anna can't have children and that she still doesn't know. He blames himself for being a coward. He apologizes for his actions. They share a tearful moment, and it's a really nice scene between these two. They really figured out a lot of shit that they're dealing with, and I like seeing that. But it's interrupted by the truck coming back for them, and as the truck pulls up, Jarvis is hunched over a seemingly unconscious Peggy. One of Manfredi's men herds Jarvis into the truck while Peggy blindsides the other. Suddenly, she's behind the other man, and they take the truck. Peggy says she plans to bring Jarvis back to his wife, and Masters is upset to find Sousa and Samberly behind bars. Thompson on the other side of them. Rather than all three being dead, Thompson tells Master that they should allow Samberly to fix the gamma cannon and turn it on Frost, and Masters is skeptical of Sousa's involvement, but Sousa agrees that Whitney is the biggest threat, and that she's definitely the one to take out, and Masters agrees. Thompson lets the others out of their cell. The three of them agree that the plan worked about as well as they could have hoped, and Manfredi then brings Whitney to a waste management facility that he believes will make a good hidden lab for her, and inside, Wilkes is strapped to a table, begging them to take him somewhere isolated, and Whitney used a massive syringe on Wilkes to try to extract the zero matter, because obviously he knows the zero matter is there, and he's trying to get rid of it. And she's trying to get rid of it. So Peggy storms in the SSR office and into Master's office and punches him in the face, which she had every right to do. She continues to beat him up, demanding to know where Thompson and Sousa are. And you really see the motivation in her. Like, she really cares. Even about Thompson, like, she doesn't want him to die. And Sousa comes in, pulls Peggy off, and in the lab, they fill Peggy in on the plan. She expresses doubt over how much they can trust Masters. She feels that Masters will turn on them as soon as Whitney's out of the way, and that he is really the main threat here. And Masters assures them that they have the stalemate that he has no interest in breaking, and Whitney is becoming impatient, and Thompson offers to go talk to her, and that they can, in fact, trust him. But I don't know. I don't really think they can. So Whitney continues to work on Wilkes, but Manfredi advises she let up before Wilkes' body gives out. Whitney meets with Thompson. Thompson flirts with Whitney a bit, and Manfredi gets in his face. Whitney tells him to back off, and Manfredi decides to take his men and go home. Thompson spills the whole plan to Whitney, offering to ally himself with Whitney in exchange for a seat on the Council of Nine, and I knew that he definitely was not to be trusted. Thompson tells Peggy that Whitney bought the story, but Peggy suspects. Now, we know, of course, that this is a story. It's not really true. But Peggy's suspicious of Thompson, and Samberly hands over the Gamma Core and tells him to handle it with extreme caution, then shows Masters and Thompson how to work the can. They drive off, and Peggy and Sousa attempt to follow, but the fuel line of their car has been cut, and Peggy suspects that it's Masters who is responsible. Peggy and Sousa demand that Samberly let them into his car and told him to turn on the gamma cannon to a bomb, and they realize that Thompson's the one who is up to something. They tell Samberly basically to build a hammer to block Thompson's remote detonation device. Sorry, a jammer, not a hammer. And Jarvis sees after Anna in the hospital. Anna asks about after Peggy and Wilkes, but Jarvis tries to change the subject. Finally, Jarvis does tell her the truth, though, of the situation. Anna tells Jarvis he should be helping Peggy because he's all Peggy has, and Jarvis agrees, but Anna knows that there's something else he's not telling her, and Jarvis tells Anna about her injuries and what's going on with her, and I like that he told her straight out. I like seeing that. So Peggy, Sousa, and Samberly arrive at the waste facility. Samberly still hasn't gotten the jammer working, but Peggy goes in to save Wilkes anyway, and Inside Masters moves into position to fire the cannon. Peggy finds Wilkes on the table. He wakes, his skin crawls again, he yells yells in pain. Wilkes tells her to leave, insists that what he did to Peggy was all of his own volition, and Thompson then pulls a gun on Masters. Peggy gets Wilkes off the table, tries walking him out, but he locks himself in the lab. Wilkes' skin begins to become covered, literally covered in zero matter, and it's really crazy. And then the ending of this episode, I really did love. Outside, Stanley gets the jammer working. Thompson leaves Masters with Whitney, goes outside, hits the detonator, but nothing happens, and Thompson tells Stanley to turn off the jammer. He says he's making the hard decision to kill everyone inside, and I like that Peggy and Sousa did try to stop me because this is not the way to go. Thompson pulls a gun on Samberly. He turns off the jammer, and Peggy pulls a gun on Thompson, and we don't know if she's going to kill him. She might kill him next week, and honestly, I could understand why. I mean, he's always felt like he's above her. He's always been against them. She's never been able to trust him. Killing Thompson might be the right thing to do. I mean, honestly, I think she has a good point of maybe just killing him. So, Whitney starts using Zero Matter on Masters, but Masters smiles when he sees the bomb is primed. Whitney is furious, but then Wilkes comes in the room, explodes in darkness. I'm pretty sure that he's dead now, and that's where the episode ends. So, overall, like I said, I was disappointed by the second episode. I really didn't feel like a penultimate episode as much. I felt like the last one definitely did. This one just felt like there were a bunch of random things going on. It didn't really work as well as it could have. But there are some things that I really did like about this episode. For example, like I said, the musical sequence definitely was the best thing about it, but let's talk about this whole situation with Whitney, because like I said, her motivation is just not there for me. Her motivation that she's had has made her so compelling. It's not there, and it's missing. It's something that I need. I need to see that motivation in her. I want to, see the motivation and things like that, but I didn't see it, and I want to see it, and that's something that I think is very important, that we do see the motivation in her, and we're not seeing that. That's something that really did, I think, ruin part of this episode for me, is that we really didn't have the motivation from Whitney. But I do like this conflict with Jarvis and Peggy. Is Peggy going to kill Thompson? I mean, I think that she might, honestly. It would make sense if she did. But we'll have to see. I mean, would she actually go through with doing it? I mean, she has reasons to do it. It would make sense if she did. And I gotta tell you guys, I'm pretty sure next week's episode is going to be the series finale, because I don't think this show's getting a third season. I mean, like I said to you guys before, Haley Atwell just booked a new show at ABC. I don't know if it was green-lighted, but just knowing that she's moving on to other things, I'm pretty sure that Agent Carter's done after this. I can't really see it continuing. What's going to happen in the finale, I'm not really sure. Is Wilkes dead? I mean, we'll have to see what's going on there. I'm pretty sure that Peggy's going to shoot Zeus over Wilkes. Definitely now she's going to. We'll have to see what's going on with that. That definitely is going to be very interesting. Anna and Jarvis, I like that he told her the truth. I thought that was a good scene overall. But just overall, guys, this episode was just a bit disappointing. There were a lot of things I really didn't like as much. Especially because, like I said, Whitney just felt like a villain. She didn't feel like a motivated villain. She just felt like a villain that they were dealing with, and that was that. And that really is what didn't work for me. I really wanted more from her as a character, and we really didn't get that here. Whatever, guys, how much you guys saw this episode. Like I said, I was a bit disappointed with this episode, but I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.